Welcome to Between Two Tittles, episode 4, starring Andrew Jackson Beal, old friend. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's good to be here
And
again.
yeah, so uh first things first, we had our first recording snafu uh with Jackson.
Hey,
So
we got to the fourth episode before we did. I think
That's
that's
right.
still kind of impressive being new to this
Credit where
personally.
credit's
But,
due.
I mean, we were
it,
going to eventually have one, but it was the fourth episode.
And Jackson's been kind enough to come back to actually get this episode done, so thank you for that. I've learned a few things, and so it should never happen again. And but now I'm going to have my anxiety spike every time I send an invite to make sure that it's recording in the correct place. And so, uh, just wanted to preface that because we'll probably have some current market trends we talk about that weren't happening when we said we'd be releasing the episode. So.
Understood.
First and foremost, Jackson, thank you for joining us
Thank you.
again.
Again.
I believe you're. So, if you want the transcripts from episode 1, please let me know. I do have those, so I can gladly send that to you directly to any of our subscribers. But Andrew, give us a little background and bio on yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously, I know you guys. I've been in the industry for 11 years now. I cut my teeth at Schneider originally. Spent 3 or 4 years there. That's how I met both of you. Sarah was on the sales floor. You were a team leader, and for Mighty Market 8, and learned a lot about brokerage, learned a lot about life, and again, towards the end of my career there, spent some time with Tommy. And when Tommy left, it was also time for me to go. So got to go experience the customer side of the supply chain industry for 7 years, running internal supply chain for a lighting and plumbing distributor. Really got a full grasp on kind of the 360 picture on not only domestic but international supply chain. Learned a lot. It was an awesome experience. And then about 18 months ago, got the opportunity to come over to FreightFlex and join the agency program, which at the time I knew nothing about, but I'm very, good friends with the CEO at FreightFlex, and have always respected him and kind of used him as a mentor. So it was a logical step for me to come over here and preach the gospel about agency for a little bit.
Yeah,
You
that's awesome. You've been hearing about agency more and more. You think past 2 to 3 years. And for those who don't really understand agency, would you kind of go into how that's different from a traditional brokerage? I've had to educate myself, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of our listeners who might want to understand, why is there all this buzz around agency and what are the main differences?
100%. So obviously, like when I was coming up and learning the trade and the industry, my only exposure to agency was, it was kind of a dirty word, right? It was Landstar. Like everyone associated agency with 1099 people running their own books under the Landstar name. And that was kind of all I knew about it. And really that's all I knew about it for some time. And then probably I was coming towards the end of my career where I was previously, and Reed had opened Freight Flex and started up and running and had told me about it, and all these brokers moving their books of business over and kind of flourishing and building their own business. And to your point, it really does seem like it's been the hot topic over the past 2 years more than anything. A lot of big logos in the industry are shifting to it. So, in a nutshell, what agency is it's a platform for tenured brokers to basically build their own brokerage or 3PL, but with a financial and technical backing. So basically, what's expected of an agent is you're a cradle to grave, you're doing sales, you're doing carrier operations. But what the agency provider should be doing for you is handling your back office, right? Your invoicing, your carrier pay, all of your customer credit, your customer onboarding. So it really is, we're a platform provider for guys to come and open their own brokerages. And there's guys that run solo, and there's guys that run, up to 10 or 12 and even larger associations. So it really, I think, when you saw a big push for return to office from a lot of companies, a lot of guys had gotten really comfortable, running armchair brokerage from their house. And why go back in if I can branch off and go do this on my own for, what is a vastly different commission split than what they're used to. So there is an opportunity to make more money in some cases. So I think it's, for the hungry entrepreneur of this current generation, there seems to be a big push for it.
So, leading agency recruiting, you've got to have like a playbook for who you're looking for, right? And so, like, what are some of your green flags? What are your red flags? What are those things that really make you kind of nervous about onboarding someone?
100%. So I think my biggest eye-opening experience when jumping into this role was qualifying candidates in exactly what you're talking about. Big first factor is cradle to grave, right? There's tons of big companies out there and small companies that separate their floor, right? You've got sellers and you've got carrier salespeople, and very rarely have I experienced someone that could do the full package competently. And I think that's the number one qualifier, just because if you can't do both pieces of the process, that's not where we're providing support, right? Like we're not going to step in and book your loads for you, and we're not going to go out and close customers for you either. So, being cradle to grave and fully focused on both sides of it and competent, I think is a huge factor. The second piece too, honestly, is going to be customer relationships. Um, this is a scenario where we've seen guys build from scratch, and it certainly can be done. I've seen some killer salespeople absolutely build from scratch because they have a non-compete, non-solicit. So they have to go out and start from the ground up. And when it comes to guys like that, it's wanting to see tenure of guys that have been there before. I mean, we saw it all the time. I've definitely known, we've got some similar contacts that I've seen do it. Like a book of business can be built again, but it takes a certain personality and a certain drive to be able to literally build it from the ground up. That being said, if you do come from a company that you can have a portable book of business and you have that customer relationships, it's a lot easier to translate that over. But that also comes with the conversation of, do you feel fully confident your customers are going to come with you? I mean, all the time you hear, we've seen it here and we've seen it other places where guys feel like they're going to come over and bring 10 or 12 customers. And when all the chips fall in the right places, their customers in their peak season, or they're not willing to onboard another broker right now, regardless of the relationship. So you've got to plan for that. And really, the third factor that was probably I learned later on in the recruiting process is I became more of a people person because I've always been operationally mindset, is making sure they're set up for success for the transition, right? Have they financially prepared for having to make, a 60 to 90 day transition of paychecks, right? What does it look like to have to go purchase insurance on your own? Kind of walking them through the full steps. What I think we do at Freight Flex specifically, and I pride myself on, is we never take on anyone I don't feel like I can set up for success. And I want to be fully transparent from start to finish. Like here could be some potential pain points when you make the transition. Here's what I don't like about the situation. Here's what I do like about the situation. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you are asking someone to leave a W-2 role in most cases in a secure paycheck and go out on their own. And it's eat what you kill. So, we want to make sure that we're doing our damnedest in some cases to make sure, hey, we're going to provide you everything we said we were going to provide you, but we believe that you can do this.
How are you preparing carrier cells today to share capacity amongst agencies, right? Because it's better to collectively purchase as one. What does that look like within your operations in a cradle to grave model?
Great question. I love that question because I don't think that's talked about enough. So within our system, we're partnered with Ty for our TMS, and we love Ty. We do give agents access to basically when you go in and price a load, right? You're going to get three tools. You're going to get DAT, you're going to get green screens, which is now Triumph Intelligence, but we also have an internal pricing tool that lists out all the carriers that have run on a lane when you're doing truckload quoting, what they've run for, the type or the mode. And then we also put in carrier notes for every single carrier. We service card them as they go in. So you can see, was the service good? Was there an issue on the load? And I think it's something we preach pretty fluently across both sides of the business, which is, especially in today's market, we treat carriers right, right? If you owe them detention, you pay detention, right? If they're owed a layover, you pay a layover. Like we treat drivers and carriers like people. It's not this, hey, this gone are the days of there's 1,000 trucks in the market and we can just burn everyone to the ground and chase to the bottom. Like this is about creating relationships, creating respect, which is a lot. I mean, I remember you pounding this into us when I was coming up as a broker, right? Like you build relationships, you treat it just like you would a customer book of business, because we are now approaching that time where people that have relationship carriers, they're going to be very, very lucrative in this environment because the carriers that they remember, right? They've got a long memory. They're going to remember who took care of them and who didn't. So It's hard to coach, but I think with the right mentality and really the right culture, you'll see who will prevail in this environment.
Well, you talk about who's going to prevail in this environment, but I think me and you both, and I think Brent too, both have been in those roles where we've interviewed candidates and they're like, oh, I'm cradle to grave. I'm a rock star. I can do this. I did everything from A to Z. What do you look for to really kind of maybe what questions would you ask or what would you poke at to really evaluate is this a true high performing cradle to grave person that could succeed in agency?
That's a good question. Honestly, I mean, there's a lot of cases, depending on how well they sell themselves to me. I ask for numbers, right? If I can get data and see the data, I want to see it because you do run into scenarios where we'll have someone that comes through and they were an account executive, right? But what they were more is more of an account manager. So they may have customer interaction, but
Hmm.
from a customer management standpoint, not necessarily a, hey, I'm out there, I'm on the pavement, I'm going door to door, or hey, I'm hitting the phones every day trying to close new business. Same thing on the carrier side. I think the carrier side is a little easier to vet out. I mean, buzzwords and certain tools, and I mean, my carrier guys, you really know, like my heavy haul guys specifically, I know when we're feeling them out because they're actually pushing us. They're like, hey, I need access to this. I need truck stop. I need highway, I need oversize.io. Like they know exactly what they need to run their carriers. And in a lot of cases, when they have established business, they'll come to us and like, hey, I need to make sure the following MCs, like, do they fit in your carrier qualifications? Can I get them active in your system? And thankfully, with tools like Highway, like we'll set up a separate call. Like we'll go through the MC list and I'll be like, yep, yep, nope, conditional. We can take a look at that one. So I think that's kind of it falls on both sides. Like with sales, like if they're good sellers, they know their customers, they know their customer base, they know what they're good at. Same thing with carriers. On the carrier side of things, they'll kind of come to the table of us and be like, hey, here's what I need to be successful to cover my customers' freight.
And I think you hit the crux of it and what a lot of times when you're looking at the sales side is do you have a hunter or do you have a farmer? You need a
I
little bit
I
about
love that
those are
terminology because we
those
use
are
it too.
both.
Yep.
But especially in agency, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, you got to be like 70-30 hunter. Yes,
It's
you got to maintain the relationships. And you could theoretically, if you grow it big enough, you can hire the support to really help you with the farming. But from the beginning, you got to hunt. Like that's more of where you got to lean.
Absolutely, Sarah. I mean, it's one of those things where, at a 70-30 split, we've kind of dialed down the numbers. At a 70-30 split, about a $15,700 book of business a month is about $100,000 take home after taxes. And if you want to be a farmer and you're happy with that, because you think about that in the grand scheme of a W-2 brokerage, that's not a very big book of business monthly, right? Like we're looking at ramp goals at a big business and going, 15K, I don't know about that. But to your point, there's some other guys out there that are like, where's the peak, right? How high can we go? Let's get out there and it's everyday hunter. And we've got some guys on the top end of our agency scale that are just, I never cease to amaze the commission checks, and those guys are still out there closing business. It's like, hey, can you go find this person in Zoom info? Hey, we're trying to close this business. Our president's really good about jumping on calls with our agents, especially with bigger logos and trying to get the business across the finish line. And to your point, it's a mentality. You know who your farmers are and you know who your hunters are.
What do you do if someone outkicks their coverage? Let's say they've been in several bids, right?
Yeah.
And they actually all land at the same time and they need additional support. How does that work at Freight Flex?
Yeah, so we've got three options, right? And for the solo guys, it depends on what they're looking for. They can choose to bring on a sub agent or an operator if they want to, and they negotiate the split with their sub agent however they want, and then rewrite the contract for them. We provide payroll services, so if they wanted to W-2 someone and bring them on as a full-time employee, we can cater to that. There is a minimum associated with that just because of the purpose of running payroll. We kind of have to have a baseline of where we start that at. The third option is we've found a killer partner who I'm really happy with in Light Hire, and it's nearshoring and offshore staffing. What we like about them specifically is they built their company up around specifically around Ties TMS. So I know there's some other companies in the industry like Lean Solutions and a few other that I've heard of. But what we love about Tie is they come to our agents fully trained up in not only Freight Flex's protocol, but ties TMS. So we can plug and play these guys as they say fit. I actually have a good example of that. We had a solo that came on that runs a lot of flowers right before Valentine's Day. And he kind of prefed us in J January. He's like, man, I'm going to have this flower business kick up mid-February. And I'm going to go from, I think he was running probably 120 loads a month at the time to almost 300, which is a solo operator is wild to me, right? So that's just, and he's like, hey, I need an operator, and here's exactly what I need. And what's great about, shout out to Drew Spence over at the Light Hire team. We get them into meetings with him, and Drew kind of lines out exactly what he's asking for, what they can provide, and then they get a solution and plug and play it pretty quick. And I haven't gotten a bad review from any of our agents we've sent over there yet. So, and I encourage my guys, everyone reaches a threshold to your point, and it's something that I think solos really need to keep in mind is it's great to close business, but you got to support the business too. So we get around that 150 to 200 load a month on your own scale, and it's like, hey, I can't tell you what to do at your own business, but I would strongly suggest you investing in some near shore offshore staffing.
They hit the plateau
Yeah.
and they sit there and it's like the split's great. But
And then
once you hit
service
your
starts to
plateau
slip. Yep.
and that you stay there. You stay there or dip to your point. You can't really go any higher. And so you've got to make sure that you know what your breaking point is and
Yeah.
plan ahead to
Exactly.
your
Wow,
point.
wow, it really sounds truly like they're business owners. Like, I mean, you are 100% a business owner because that sounds like a business decision. It's you have to spend money to make money,
And
right?
that's what I
And
always tell
just
guys is I can make suggestions, right? But at the end of the day, it is their business, and we can suggest. And I think our vice president Brianna Condon and our president Hunter Arnold, they've been doing this long enough to where they provide as much guidance as they really can to these guys. But you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Um, but again, I think it's something that makes unique. I know there's some other programs out there like it, but our president of agency, Hunter, was the first agent over here at Freight Flex. So he did this for 2 years with his partner Talbert. And they kind of honed out exactly like what they needed to be successful. And then it's like, all right, can we replicate this? So we really try to hang our hat on, we're built by agents for agents because we've had guys that have sat in that seat and done this, and we know, how to support you and how to lead you in the right direction to success.
so you made a transition as like you went from strategic carrier sales and then you became a shipper for a while.
Yeah.
And so can you talk a little bit about that transition and also a little bit about the work you did and how that impacted your idea of carrier relations?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I transitioned over, I actually wanted to leave freight. I took on a role as a project estimator with wanting to be a project manager in construction and general contracting. I worked for a really eccentric entrepreneur, and I was drowning, right? Those first 3 months out of carrier sales and really out of a boiler room environment, where I was coming into project estimation and what was really a lot of data entry and book work. I mean, just not my thing. I mean, I'm a phone guy, I'm a people person, or I try to be, or an operator, but sitting in front of a spreadsheet all day. I thought I was getting fired. I did. They pulled me in about 3 months in, and they sat me down with the president and the vice president of operations, and I was like, "Oh, this is not good. Like, this is the end. Time to go find something else. Time to call Tommy." Like, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to make you the director of logistics and supply chain." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "I want to be very clear. I have done domestic truckload, and that is the extent of my experience in this business." And they're like, "You're going to figure it out. We've got nothing but confidence in you." Which, I can never thank them enough for the opportunity because I did. I learned basically a 4PL supply chain all the way from, domestic truckload, box truck, final mile delivery to, ERP systems and warehousing and distribution centers, and then finally imports, exports, air freight. I mean, really fully versed in it. And that's how I met Reed. He was my original rep over at Crane. That's who we were doing business with when I first started over there. And I can't think, during that time, Phil Whittle, Tom Clark, and Reed were all mentors, and really, I probably got me through those first 2 years of taking on that role of me calling them every day, but like, I have a new problem. How do I solve this problem? Like, let's get our heads together and get me through this so I stay employed. Um, but it changed the rhetoric for me because obviously coming from an environment where I became the person people were calling all day. and it made me reset, which was A, I always took phone calls from brokers, right? I empathize with brokers and like, hey, I remember having to take the calls. I'll give the kid 5 minutes, right? I'll give the guy 5 minutes. Let's hear what you have. Let's see what you got. Inevitably, what it was for us was a service relationship. 90% of the business there was white glove final mile. So we had project managers on planes going to job sites to be on site for delivery, to meet the driver, to check in the freight. And so, not to say that probably larger logos couldn't handle it, but at the time, box truck and sprinter van was more of a niche market for brokers. And so we had to get a little more strategic with who we partnered with because, again, they had to put up with a lot of guff from me and our team because, I mean, 2 or 3 minutes late, I was on the phone, I was in someone's ear. I ran hot for probably 6 years straight, trying to manage these on-site deliveries and all of this transit. But again, I came from a spot of perspective, and it, I had to mature to communicate because when I looked at a driver being late, that's transportation, right? Like a driver's going to be late, things are going to happen. There's traffic, there's X amount of factors. People outside of the industry, A, don't know, and B, don't really care, right? They're paying for a service. They want the service to occur in the time that they dictated it. So that took a lot of patience on my part trying to navigate that. But again, it's understanding the importance of relationships because had we not built those relationships with the carriers we worked with, the 3 or 4 brokers we worked with really backpacked us to get us where we were doing, what was anywhere between, 10 to 15 final miles a day on top of airport recoveries and all kinds of other last minute grenades we would throw at them. So um, I wasn't prepared for it, but we figured it out.
So you mentioned that you were one of the nice shippers and would take brokers' calls.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so would you mind telling me what was the best pitch you got and what was the worst? And we'll throw an honorable mention in there, like a middle.
Yeah, honestly, the best pitch I got was there was a young man that showed up to the office. Actually, him and his boss showed up to the office. It was just during COVID. I mean, I went to the office every day during COVID. And through COVID, dude, they showed up to the office, navigated through our office. I was one of the only people there, found me, brought me cookies, but also like they came educated. I don't know how they'd figured it out, but they knew exactly what we were doing, which we're not a very, it wasn't a very public company in terms of not a lot of people knew what we did and how our transportation ran. So for them to come in well versed on like, hey, I know you're running 90% straight trucks with lift gates with final mile white glove service and them being dialed in. Yeah, I'll listen because you even pitched that to some new guys at the other brokerages and they just didn't even know how to price it. They were sitting there scratching their heads. He goes, "Hey, here's our box truck network. Here's at the time I didn't know about Selectus. They pitched me Selectus. They're like, hey, here's a curated box truck network of pre-vetted carriers that we've got a little more control over." And I was like, boys, I'm sold. Like, let's see what the rates look like. Let's go. Let's get some business. The worst ones, there were tons of them, right? It's the text messages, it's the emails, it's like not even trying to call. And the worst one was like there were a few logos I'm not going to mention, but they're pretty prevalent and I still see it now. I'd have 4 reps call me from the same office in one day. I'm like, did we not talk to someone else from your office earlier? Like this isn't going to work out. Or just like sloppy pitches, like, so like you guys do freight, right? And it's, yeah, we've got some freight. Yes, that's correct. And it's just you can tell it's like just sloppy coaching and surprising for me because again, going through a training program at a large local brokerage, like, you spent a month in the training room, you went through role playing scenarios, like your calls were monitored. I mean, it was just I guess it was just a different era because this was, it was 5 years after I'd left there, but it was very eye-opening to see that sloppy of a pitch would happen on there. And then there were some great in-betweens. I would say the most successful guys, and I see it a lot in agency, are the pound the pavement guys that get in the car, show up to the office, come prepared, don't really care what you look like, show up in a hoodie, right? Like that doesn't bother me, but like be cordial, be friendly, and just be educated. I mean, if you say you know my freight spend and you know what we're doing, you better know it, and then we can have a conversation. I'm fine with that.
That reminds me of Sherman Barnes. Sherman Barnes is very much someone who will he's just going to show up and chat you up. But
I love it.
yeah, what you're talking about though with the poor performance and the poor sales calls kind of bleeds into exactly why the agency model makes so much sense, right?
Yeah.
You're the guys you're bringing on are not performing at that level, right? They're performing 9, 10 times that level, right? When
Absolutely.
and so like I think with some of the deployment of AI, those entry level training jobs are not going to be there in 10 years, right? And so like for instance, in today's world, AI is going to make those check calls. Like it's
Oh
already
yeah.
happening. They're deployed
Oh
out
yeah.
there. You know, and when I was starting, you would have to work one Saturday a quarter and
Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday, and you'd have to do that once every 3 months. And so, you don't have to do that anymore. The babysitting is unneeded, right? They have a connected ELD that's going to alert you if it's an at-risk shipment, right? And they're connected to all these other devices, and also at the same time, the AI is going to call and check in if it goes off route,
Right.
right? And so, like in that same vein, what in your eyes are some AI technologies that will eventually replace other parts with the supply chain?
I'm fortunate that the team lets me sit in on a lot of tech demos we do with other companies. We've seen a few. I mean, they came back from Manifest and we demoed a few different softwares, but it's wild to see how much AI has grown from, I mean, pricing. Like they're negotiating rates with carriers via email and doing it effectively, like better than some brokers are in some cases. Terrifying, right? Terrifying. I think the check call piece is probably the biggest one for me. I think there's a lot of merit to getting constant updates, whether it be via text, email, call, what have you. Just, everyone wants to rely on macro point. ELD is pretty reliable, but getting that additional touch point on there and making sure the customer communication's there because it translates over, right? They do that. AI does that check call on one side and then they flip it around and they update the customer on the other side. So like I know, it's something that a lot of our agents that run priority freight and overnight are interested in the long run because a lot of these guys are splitting. I've got one duo I work with on a daily basis that they trade off nights that they're up all night because one of the customers they have runs some high value priority freight and they've got to update the customer all through the night, right? And they're like it's one of their babies and they've got it, so they're sitting there trading off. So when you look at the ability to take that on and not really outsource as much as have a system that goes in there and do it, and you can just manage the exception. I think that's the whole ploy behind AI. It's like you have someone to do this repetitive task. You're just managing the exception, managing the exception, managing the exception.
Hey
Uh,
Sarah, he mentioned high value freight overnight. Does that ring any bells to you?
Stop. It's it's more sore for you than it is for me. Uh no, I do not miss that. I had a customer early on in my journey that it was high value, 250K, and part of their challenge was they had a warehouse that would only allow pickups at midnight.
mhm.
Couldn't do drop trailer, had to be live load. You had to have the driver basically either reset their hours and sleep there all day and just sit there and rest all day and then reset and have fresh hours when they go to pick up. And I'll never forget the point of contact is like, give me your cell phone number. I'm like, what? And
What?
like usually I'm like, all right, like you're a newer customer of mine. I don't just give that right out. But he's like, here's the thing. If I got a call at 1 a.m. and I get woken up, you're going to get woken up. And so I'm like,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
okay, fair enough. Brent knows, I definitely got my fair share of 1 a.m. phone calls. And then I would definitely be at Starbucks the next morning having 2 or 3 extra espresso shots in my coffee just to survive. Uh,
Sarah enjoys her sleep. Like I wake her up every now and then,
uh,
especially
uh,
now after twins. Now I think she could handle it now with twins. I think after those, how the 1 a.m. feedings and the 4 a.m. feedings go. I
The
think
sleep deprivation.
yeah, we knocked out the entire season of Shameless during that time. Hopefully Ruby and Rose do
that
not
and
remember that time.
No.
Bob's Burgers. We really
Yeah.
dug into
Oh
Bob's
yeah.
Burgers during that
Those were the
time.
two. Those were the two.
We watched those shows during feedings.
Yeah, no, it's in the same boat. We had our second right when I was transitioning over to for out of recruiting full time, kind of into more of an agency operations role, and our agent success team, I mean, I begrudgingly say it even when I talk to candidates. I go, hey, we're available 24/7. I mean, we literally someone is monitoring our team's chat from our team, like if an agent has an issue or like needs a carrier vetted or needs like an insurance policy in the middle of the night, one of us, either, Anne Marie, myself, Bree, or even Hunter, are awake, kind of like staring at it all night. And it's joke because sometimes we'll all jump in the chat at the same time. But again, it's like the same thing. Like everyone's had kids before. Like sleep is kind of a luxury at this point in your life. It's like, well, I'm up
What
anyway, so I
what
might as
is
well solve the
sleep?
problem, right?
What is sleep? What is that?
Well, I think the other thing with AI, there's a balance. I think one other area that it's really, really useful, and I try to use it day to day, is just information gathering of me not having to manually go do it and being able to go into a program and say, hey, I need this data for this
Mhm.
carrier or this client, like give me a summary, or to your point, especially on the sales side, hey, tell me about this customer, tell me about the shipper, right? And it will give you that information and it allows you to work quicker. So I think that is something AI is definitely a value add. But I think there are things that a lot of people assume AI are going to take over, but I want to go back to what was your most effective sales call when you were a shipper? It was being in person. And I
Mhm.
keep reiterating that to my team of people want to work with people. They
Absolutely.
do not want to work with robots. And there
Absolutely.
will be efficiencies that AI will be used for, but there's nothing like getting a knock on a door and having donuts and seeing the physical person and having that relationship. It still all goes back to that.
I was talking to an IT developer, and the thing that's going to be crazy is when you can write a script in your own voice. And then it can make those calls, and then it could cue you in when it's something when a manual like a manual intervention is needed from a human. So you got through that script and they didn't say no, okay, here in come you, and it's just a smooth transition. And so there's also fraud vectors that go along with that, right? And so me and
Yeah.
Sarah actually have a password, right? And so if it, if we're ever talking to each other and it's not like it's not our cell phone or something, but it says they're them. It's just like, okay, what's the password, right? And so
I love
like
that.
it just because it's going to be so prevalent, right? And so like it's going to be an easy way to trap anybody. I'm watching Sons of Anarchy right now, and I think of so many situations where a fake phone call can be made from someone's voice, leads you to a location, and it could end up being something bad. And like to that degree in a transportation, that someone could use AI to regenerate a bill of lading, right?
Yeah, bill of lading. I mean, we caught one the other day that, hey, shout out the highway because we had the bolt on the Outlook, but someone had spoofed another carrier's entire like logo, email signature header.
Hmm.
And we stared at it for a good 5 minutes. And I was like, man, if we would not have pinged this, like, yeah, we probably would have looked at the email address and caught on to it. But at first glance, like it looked 100% right as rain. Like you wouldn't have told the difference. And it's like that probably took someone 30 seconds to compile in some kind of AI generator. Like it did not create a lot of effort, you know?
Yeah, I think the other thing it's getting at is it's also aging out a portion of the workforce, right? I think because we are talking about phone calls, and I think phone calls are kind of a way to cater some of the exiting generation. I think eventually the phones won't matter as much, right? Because Gen Z is so call reluctant that that's going to lead to something other than that being able to communicate back and forth, right? And so I really truly think that phone calls are a way to cater certain portions of the industry that are eventually going to age out. But to that degree, we are currently in a market where it's still around and you still need capacity. Do you think the current brokers who have been selling freight, for the last 5 years in a down market are able to now transition into a carrier market?
That's a good question. I think like here's my thought on it. I think guys that have been heavily reliant on RFQ and contract pricing are going to struggle in this, especially if they haven't done it in an up market. I think spot market guys will be a little more pliable just because if you can play the market, you can play the ups and downs and you have the carrier relationships, it can probably be had. But I mean, it's a roller coaster right now, and you have got to be on top. I mean, I was looking at, I think Craig Fuller posted it, the sonar update for flatbed rejection today was up over like 50%. I mean, it's madness. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then of course, obviously, like the big thing I'm sure everyone's hearing this week is fuel. I mean, that's the conversation I hear that's the buzzword of the week, diesel prices, fuel, diesel prices, fuel. And then you look at that market and fuel's going. So I think anyone that's brokering spot market, I think it's a new land of opportunity and a new day because tender rejections are up. The tenders are falling through the routing guide to other people that probably didn't have a chance to touch this freight before. But are you prepared to get out there and negotiate with carriers that have been racing to the bottom for 5 years and now they see the opposite direction and it's time for them to get a little bit back?
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing similar, and I think we've got shippers that are really what we call in two camps right now, right? And maybe there's a third, but really mainly two camps. One is this is winter storm, it's temporary, it'll go away.
Yeah,
Like the effects will go away.
it'll smooth out.
Some are still sitting in that camp, like not yet. And then there's some that are starting to make moves and understand that I think a lot of feedback we've gotten is they're not sure if it'll like flip, but they do understand there's a correction coming. And
Yeah,
so they have started, you see a lot of mini bids, shipper of choice, like you're starting to hear all of that again, right? And you're also getting more people on the phone. That for the
absolutely.
solid past 2 to 3 years, you could not get certain people to even have a conversation.
Hmm.
All right, lowest rate. Otherwise, why are we talking?
Yeah,
Or they just won't even entertain it, right? Or hey, everything's good, market's good, it's in my favor. My rates haven't risen, my routing guide's not falling apart. Why do we need to talk
Or they
yeah,
just
now?
bring you in to price you out,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then they're going to
Mm-hmm.
still keep 90% incumbency by using that as leverage, right? And
yeah.
I think that's the other portion to it too is there's been so much. You mentioned Craig Fuller, aka Chicken Little. That's the piece too that the market is changing, the market is changing, the market is changing, and so it's made so many people numb to it,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of these shippers, Phil Little, for instance, is still getting a lot of the same rates.
Yeah.
And he's just saying, I don't see it. I don't feel it. And so what I think the issue is too is directly related to certain commodities
Hmm.
that are highly sought after by fraudsters. And I think compliance has has also shifted that because insurance is so expensive. Insurance isn't paying, it doesn't want to pay a claim. And so you have those two combining factors making certain commodities very difficult to haul versus when you're hauling, a 30,000 uh dollar worth load, you're willing to take the risk. And so, Jackson, my next question for you um, is, when you're comparing carriers, does cargo come into play?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, Brent. And when we're evaluating freight in general, I happen to sit right next to our director of compliance. So I'm working with him every day, and we participate, the agent success team does in carrier vetting. Cargo value absolutely comes into it. I mean, there are certain commodities at a certain value that we just straight up tell people like you're not taking. The risk is way too high. The value is way too high. Now we've partnered with some people and we're purchasing, all risk riders on a lot of freight. But to your point, there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, on the shipper side now, and it's now flowing over to the brokers. A lot of people are vetting their new carrier vendors based on, well, what kind of fraud protection do you have? Like, who are you using to, how do you vet your carriers? How can you ensure my cargo is safe? What kind of insurance are you covering? What is your claims process like? Where those used to be kind of run of the mill, hey, send me a COI with us on it, send it updated. It's like, no, no, no.
Fax it to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
faxes.
fax it to me.
Fax
Send
it to
it
me.
920 number, fax it to me, and we got you.
And to your point, it's like we vet carriers pretty high, and especially it's based on the cargo that's moving. Like we've got a bunch of guys that move some high value beef. Like I didn't know there was that much money in beef. Being from Texas, I probably should have known better. But like seeing, $500,000 shipments of beef go across, $1 million shipments of graphics cards for gaming PCs. It's like we're going to be real uptight about who we're putting on this. What's the relationship? Have they moved freight with us before? Do we get additional insurance on it? And again, with the right tools, it's as long as you have a keen eye and a thorough process, it can be done safely. But again, you always have to be on top of the latest and greatest fraud trend or whatever's going out there because, the bad actors are so prevalent now and the double brokering and you see it jokingly like John Rogers and some other guys posted it's like MCs duct taped to the side of trucks and it's like oh no, like how many of these are out there shipper due diligence I just there's so many factors out there that you have to monitor and again, I think that's why there's this resurgence in companies from a W-2 perspective wanting two things. You want really, really tenured carrier guys that have been doing this for a long time, have a deep network, and carrier compliance, right? That was never I don't think it was ever a role that was previously like, man, that's what I really want to do, right? Like I want to be the carrier compliance guy. Like it was a grenade role for a while because it's like you're always the guy telling people no, like you can't use this, find another carrier. And now it's like they're a critical part of your infrastructure in order to keep your entire company safe. Um, so kind of
And
seeing that shift and watching all that happen, and again, being so involved in getting to play in tools like Highway all day long, it's really cool to see the tech that's out there if you utilize it correctly.
And I think too, more conversations I've had, and a lot of times when you are using your third party side, your brokerage side of the business, the one of the main objections you get is I only want assets.
Hmm.
And in the past, when you have pressed on that, a lot of it was about rate and drop trailer and knowing I have the asset and I
Yeah.
know where the truck is, everything like that. A lot of the conversations I'm having now are around security because and then I ask them, I say, okay, understand the previous brokerage, third party. Let me ask you something. Did they tell you about their carrier vetting process? Did they tell you how strict they were? Did they tell you how they prevent that from happening?
Ooh, emotional
And
drowning. All right.
and and no, I mean, honestly, and then some of them have said no. I want to say 50-50 of the conversations I've had are no. I mean, they really didn't lay that out for us. And so we're partnered with Go Highway too. And so we lay that out there. Hey, we have a partner, but we also have our own security team on top of that to really be partners in that and all the layers we have to that. And you walk through a shipper with that, and they're like, I had one. I was telling my team the other day, I had one who's like, oh, y'all actually care. Y'all actually care about who you bring into your network. We're like, yeah. And
Absolutely.
so it's interesting how that has turned from, hey, I think assets are cheaper and that I can guarantee the asset. I know where the truck is. It's now it's security.
So which influencer's freight is getting stolen next? So Tucker Carlson had
It
all of his
was Guy Fieri's
Guy Fieri's
tequila.
tequila,
Was it?
Shaquille
Yeah.
O'Neal, his stuff, and so like
His Raptor, his ATV or whatever. His
yeah. So
yeah.
so who's next? I almost feel like the fraudsters are doing it just to get more publicity, right?
Yeah.
And so like
Right.
I I I struggle sometimes with some of the laxness from the shipper end, right? I feel like a lot of it is easy for them to say, oh, I hired a service, I trust them, I'm done. And I think eventually it's going to be really the person that's going to be on to really help shift the industry will be the shipper.
Hmm.
Hmm.
By deploying technologies like bird's eye security that
Yep.
has AI cameras detecting who is coming in and out and docking those procedures, actual ID verification, not just a security guard looking at it and then just writing down, right, running it through a database that it is actually who they say it is, right, and stopping it at the shipper. I think more often than not, they think, well, I hired a service and I looked at the BOL, it's good. And I think that's not to say they don't have enough going on. I think that's why
Yeah.
it doesn't happen is just it's probably due to the fact that that's another hat when they're wearing 17 other ones, like you
Yeah.
mentioned before. Did you do anything extra when you were a shipper to verify the person who is they say they are?
100%. I actually spent, speaking of multiple hats, I mean, I would be on the, I mean, I unloaded containers. I went and loaded drivers in the morning if our warehouse staff was short. Like we kind of did a little bit of everything. But I mean, we got to a point where we were using consistent drivers. If it was another driver or a different carrier outside of what we were typically using on a lane, our guys on the dock were actually, I got to give them a lot of credit. They were very hip to like, hey, like this MC does not match the side of what's on this van or on this Sprinter. Like they were a little more hip to it. We almost did get to a point to where you're saying like, you can spoof macro point pretty easily. We thought about putting air tags in our freight at a certain point and kind of monitoring it on our own. We looked at a couple different ways. I mean, broken seals, our guys were good about being on ELDs for the most part, and we did ask our providers. I mean, we wanted tracking updates every hour. So we expected consistent tracking updates throughout the night. And if it deviated from time or route, like we wanted to know about it. And we wanted to know, like I would get calls all through the night about, hey, this driver's tracking 2 hours off, or hey, he's taking a completely different route now. But to your point, like some shippers are really good about it. Some have 10,000 things going on. They're going to load the truck, they're going to sign the paperwork, they're going to push it off the door. And then you have we have customers. We have thankfully have a customer facing portal. I can think of three customers right off the top of my head that like they watch macro point like a hawk. Like if there's a deviation on macro point, like there's 30 emails like, hey, what's going on here? Why is the driver stopped? What's going on? And then we have some that'll use macro point. They'll look at ELDs and they'll use four kites. I mean, there's some wild stuff out there in terms of tracking and tracing and the security. And then I actually demoed, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago. I know you've seen it before. The first time I've actually seen a live demo of gin logs and like what a crazy piece of like spy technology there. Like he was like, oh, we tagged this license plate at this checkpoint, at this checkpoint. It's wild. It's wild what's out there. But I think it's probably a cost thing too. Like from thinking about days as a shipper side, it all comes down to your bottom dollar, and it's like, can we get away with this and be okay without having to implement these extra systems or extra security? And I think it's one of those things where, fool me once, okay, like the accidents happen. At a certain point, all shippers are going to have to get a little more keen to it, especially with the high value stuff, just because it seems like I mean, I remember if a truckload got stolen, it used to be because the truck was physically stolen at like gunpoint or something,
Direct theft.
like
Yes.
direct theft. And now it's like spoof BOLs. I mean, you live in it every day, but it's just such a different world now to what people were used to when it comes to theft and fraud.
Or it was like an inside job. I feel like that was the other
Exactly.
accusation that was happening back then of
Exactly.
like, well, like we verified all this, like, oh, this was an inside job.
Yeah.
Somebody told them like
Someone tipped
where
them
the
off.
tracker was in the pallets, like something like that. And it's changed so much. But I think the other thing that I think shippers and brokerages are keeping an eye on right now is the case of the Supreme Court with C.H. Robinson. Now that's more around safety and liability there, but I think that will be an indicator on, how is the administration going to act going
Mhm.
forward on that with transportation, and then also how are shippers and brokerages going to react? Because then at that point, it just becomes a tug of war of who owns the liability, or
Well, no,
it's more like hot potato,
and I also
honestly.
think who owns setting the minimum requirements because the government has already given you the most minimal of requirements. They don't even check to make sure that mail was delivered when they're issuing the MC
Yeah,
number.
right.
Right. And so like anything that the government comes in to weigh in on, market and qualifications is laughable at best. I mean, they inspect less than 10% of the entire carrier market. If everybody's mostly unrated. You get lucky if you have a satisfactory rating. And so to assume that that governing body could come in and then say a broker made a bad choice, I think it's then on our Department of Transportation to step in and say, okay, this is how you should have vetted them. And I think that will open way too many cans of worms. And that's why I ultimately think that, they're going to rule on the side of C.H. Robinson because their inaction has led to it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's going to be the major piece is the DOT and the FMCSA have both been in complicit of just being lax on their laurels. And it comes down to transportation being grandpa's business. It's been the last adopter of most technologies. And then COVID hit. Like you
Yep.
said, Jackson, COVID hit and it changed everything
Blew the doors off of everything.
because I can't get my toilet paper, right? And then when people had, squirrely rear ends, it changed a lot of
Yeah.
things,
I
right?
need
And
this, and
yeah,
but I need it by the pallet, and I need it at my house, and I need
And
it.
because I need that, there's MCs that are, oh, it's a home address or it's a PO box. And there's a lot of that out there too. So it's
Well, I
just
don't know
so
if it was
crazy.
I don't know if it's Highway that posted it or Freight Caviar, but that was probably my eye-opening poll because some of the polls out there are just fun, but that one was like how many power units or MCs have not been inspected, and I was like, what, maybe like 60, okay, maybe 70%. When I saw it was 90%, I was just like, I was like, there's no way, right? There's no possible way that 90% of the on-road vehicles have gone without inspection. That was seriously an eye-opening stat for me. I had no idea.
I was actually talking to a state trooper recently about inspections specifically, right? Because as a carrier advocate within highway, one of the biggest things I hear all the time is that come give me an inspection. I'll take an inspection right now. And they're just an owner operator. They don't usually get inspections, right? The infrastructure is typically the issue because in order to actually conduct a thorough inspection, right, you need a lot of room, right? And you think of the choke points within 35 here in Texas. He says, I'm not going to give the actual states. I don't want to give anybody some free rein here, but there's a 20-mile stretch on 35 where they just won't even pull over the truck to do the inspection. I mean, they've got to be doing something really, really wrong for them to do it because there's just zero room to conduct a safe
Yeah, safety.
inspection.
Yeah.
And so, infrastructure, I think, is one piece of it as well. Um, but at the same time, I think infrastructure will also be the downfall of some of these trucking companies because autonomous vehicles like um, Aurora, Kodiak, I think it's Autobot. I was talking to those guys today. They are actually running successful full autonomous runs from Houston to San Antonio and Houston to Dallas. That, uh, you know, eventually the infrastructure becomes so good that'll actually limit the amount of people able to haul middle mile,
Yeah.
right? I've heard it compared to as a inland rail, like an, excuse me, no, an on-road railroad, right?
Mhm.
Because eventually that middle mile is going to be moved on a truck, but not a driver.
Yep.
So
I
that's another thing that AI is rapidly taking away from us. But in like we'll end with two more questions, right? And I'll let Sarah ask one. It can be a fun one, but my one is this: in your crystal ball, what do you see in Q3 and Q4 for the market?
I with everything that's going on between Tinder rejection already being where it is, no idea what's going to happen with all the current events in the world and what fuel's going to do. And but with the reversal of the tariffs and lots of freight moving stateside, I think we keep heading up because I would be shocked if this is not the biggest retail season in the past 5 years. I think, a lot of large shippers were holding off on moving freight, tariffs this, tariffs that. Okay, those get repealed. Now, I was talking to my buddies that still work on the steamship line side of things saying boats are moving full. We're already kind of hitting critical mass. And the other thing that we see every single day, you pull up LinkedIn, someone's talking about another trucking company going out of business, drivers leaving the market. Capacity is only getting tighter. And so I think we really are looking at a perfect storm where the market will probably overcorrect before it settles down. And I think definitely The big factor is we're going to get closer to summer, building season's picking up already, industrial supplies are moving, retail season hits, and that will be the true litmus of how high can this market go.
I think road check is going to be like a powder keg,
Yeah.
especially when what they're focusing on is ELD compliance and I forget the other thing, but like both of those things roll into all this execution of this, the laws that are on the books and that are being tightened up. I think that's going to be the powder keg, to be honest.
Yeah.
People are going to freak out. Um, but with all of this going on, we love to have some fun here, like Brent said
Sure.
on the podcast. So a couple of fun questions. First one, so we know you as an outlet. For you, you like to remodel, work on cars. So curious, what are you working on right now?
So we just finished up a 1973 Land Rover, Series 3. It's kind of a passion project we found out of Florida. We literally, we use transportation. I had one of my agents book two 26-foot box trucks. We literally bought this thing frame off. The guy had palletized it. It was a dead project. We built that in 6 months. It's a fun little. I actually took the girls out in it the other day, so that's been a fun car. We just 76 Bronco came in the other day. We're kind of toying with that. We may take it on as a project, we may not. I moved one of my BMWs onto the lift the other day. That's kind of been a project that I've literally owned since I worked at Schneider 10 years ago, and like slowly stuff got done, and then I had to get, continue to work and then have kids. So I'm hoping to tackle that this year. And then we are kind of looking for a milestone project. I've always been captivated by mid 70s Porsches. It's really something I want to do. That's another one, just like the freight market, those keep going up. And then, we've always had a soft spot for fastback Mustangs. We've built a couple of those now, and I think we'll probably do another one this year. We've kind of got a frame we found, and then I've got a personally just picked up a 73 F100. Um,
Ooh.
yeah. So that'll be a focus on those this year. I've really been trying to, focus on work-life balance and get out there, and the girls actually like to come out and help sometimes. So it's something we can do as the family. They'll either, they'll bang the hammer on the broken car or whatever, or go work in the garden or something on the side. So we've really enjoyed that. And again, it's a nice stress relief, and it's why we moved, is to be closer to family and be able to do stuff like that. So
Do you still have the Audi? Do you still have
Justin Rizzoli.
do you still have the Audi?
So that car still exists. Actually, I sold it no, it's probably longer than that. I probably sold that car 6 years ago, to the mechanic that did the engine work on it when I originally built it, and he actually has fully gutted it, and it participates in a spec race series, and it is actually I've got photos of it actually in my office of it running on Circuit of Americas in Austin.
That is awesome.
I
That
have
is
tried to
awesome.
buy that
Whoa.
car back for the better part of 5 years, and he will not sell it to me. And it is my biggest regret. But yeah, the car still exists. It's not green anymore, but it still exists.
Ah,
That's
that Hunter
that's
Green came
Yeah,
back around.
it's
It's like a
big. It's
popular
big.
car now. It's like it's one of the major options they still offer now.
I may paint the BMW that color still. We'll see. We'll see.
I love the Hunter Green color. It is so popular now.
speaking of green, St. Patrick's Day is coming up. So what do you do to celebrate?
So we don't live in Dallas anymore. So normally I would just tell you we'll get a babysitter and go to Greenville afterwards.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes,
I
that's a
don't know.
party.
Charleston's kind of quaint. Like there's little activities all over the place. We'll probably go. The downtown has a cool little part of the main drag that they kind of block off on weekends anyway. So we'll honestly, they always good about more family oriented activities. So we'll probably take the girls out there, dress them up in green. I'm sure my wife has some kind of smock outfit for both of them that they'll be in before it's all said and done. So, and then maybe a couple of Guinnesses here and there.
Nice.
Yeah, I always, that's my one thing, no matter how busy it is or anything like that, because I mean, my maiden name's McGann and my mom's maiden name's O'Brien. So it's like, shoot, I mean, I can't do nothing.
Yeah,
So I
you gotta celebrate.
gotta have a Guinness. So it's either on draft, find it on draft somewhere or get it from the grocery store and have it at home. But that's a little thing I do
I
for
love
Yeah,
sure.
I can't pinch her because her blood's essentially green. So, there's not much I can do there.
it.
she's born next to the Blarney Stone, all right? And so
It
Lassie is
runs
born.
deep. It runs
It
I
deep.
runs deep.
it does. It does. Well, hopefully recorded this time, Jackson. No promises to everyone here.
Hey, I'm
Thanks.
happy to do it again.
Thanks again for joining us.
For
Again,
sure.
if anyone wants a transcript from the first episode, please just let me know. I'll gladly send it to you. Still very much so embarrassed, but it is what it is. Well, we got some learning, and then we have a great guest in Jackson who graciously came back on. Thank you for taking time away from you and your family again. We appreciate your support here, and we look forward to seeing all the things Freight Flex does, and also your upcoming car projects. We'd love to see pictures.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate y'all having me on, and always happy to be a supporter of old friends trying to do things like this. And I mean, you can even see from the response from the post. I mean, people love it and love what y'all do, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, I may still the graphic from the LinkedIn post you did about the freight draft. That might be
It's a good one.
it
It's a
might be
good
it
one.
might be the logo for this one, Jackson. So I think that's what we're gonna do.
All right, sounds
All
good.
right,
Well, y'all
man.
have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Thanks, you
Appreciate
too.
you. Later, man.